Ethan Miller had just finished a double shift at Station 14. 12 years as a firefighter had taught him that exhaustion was normal. But tonight felt heavier than usual. His knees ached, his shoulders burned, and all he wanted was a hot shower and sleep. He was still in his truck, parked outside his small rental home when he smelled it. Smoke. First he thought it was his imagination. Firefighters live with phantom smells. But then he saw it. A faint orange glow rising behind the row of houses across the street. His heart rate spiked instantly. Training took over before thought did. Ethan jumped out of the truck, radio in hand, scanning the street. The glow was growing brighter. A house 2 doors down was on fire. "Dispatch, this is Miller. I've got a structure fire on Maple Street. I'm off duty but responding," he said, already running. The house belonged to the Ramirez family. Ethan didn't know them well, just a quick wave now and then. A young mother, 2 kids, and an older sedan always parked out front. As he got closer, flames burst through a front window, and thick smoke poured into the night. "Fire! Somebody call 911. Ethan shouted, even though he knew someone already had. He ran to the front door and tried the handle. Locked. He kicked it hard once, twice. On the third kick it gave way. Smoke swallowed him whole. Inside, the heat was brutal. Visibility was nearly zero. Ethan pulled his t-shirt over his mouth and dropped low, crawling forward. He listened for sounds, coughing, crying, anything. Then he heard it. A child's cry. Faint, terrified, somewhere to the left. "Firefighter! I'm here!" he yelled, forcing his voice to sound calm. He followed the sound into what looked like a living room. Flames licked up the curtains, and a couch was already burning. He spotted a little boy, maybe 5 years old, huddled near the corner, frozen in fear. Ethan scooped him up, shielding the child's face, and turned back toward the door. The smoke was thicker now, the heat worse. The ceiling groaned ominously. Outside, neighbors rushed forward as Ethan emerged, coughing, the boy clinging to him. "There's more," Ethan shouted. 2 more inside. He handed the boy to a woman who was sobbing uncontrollably. His mother, Elena Ramirez. "My daughter. My baby," she cried. Without hesitation, Ethan turned back. The second entry was harder. Flames had spread rapidly. The hallway was partially collapsed, and the smoke was so thick he could barely breathe. He dropped lower, pushing himself forward inch by inch. He heard coughing this time. A woman's voice, weak but desperate. "Help, please." Ethan found Elena trapped in the kitchen, her arm burned, smoke choking her lungs. He grabbed her, wrapping one arm around her waist, and dragged her toward the door. Every step felt like lifting concrete. They barely made it out before the windows shattered and flames exploded outward. Elena collapsed onto the lawn, gasping for air, crying her children's names. "One more," she wheezed. "My daughter. Sophia upstairs." Ethan's chest tightened. The fire department sirens were close now, but he knew time was everything. He looked at the burning house, the flames roaring like something alive, and he went back in. Upstairs was a nightmare. The stairs were partially engulfed, the railing gone. Ethan covered his face, climbed fast, and followed the sound of coughing into a bedroom. Sophia was 8 years old. She was trapped by a fallen beam, crying, her face streaked with soot. "It's okay," Ethan said, forcing strength into his voice. "I've got you." He lifted the beam with everything he had, ignoring the pain screaming through his muscles, and pulled her free. Cradling her, he turned toward the window. The hallway was no longer passable. Without thinking, Ethan kicked out the window. Below, firefighters had arrived and were holding a rescue net. "Jump!" someone yelled. Ethan held Sophia tight and jumped. They landed hard but safely. Cheers erupted from the crowd, mixed with sobs and disbelief. All 3 were alive. Ethan sat on the curb, shaking, lungs burning, watching paramedics work on the Ramirez family. He felt the delayed fear rush through him now, the realization of how close it had been. Elena was treated for burns and smoke inhalation. The kids were wrapped in blankets, scared but safe. When Elena finally stood, she looked straight at Ethan and walked toward him. He expected tears, gratitude, maybe a hug. Instead, she said something that stunned him. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "But you didn't just save our lives. You saved me from giving up." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "My husband died last year," she said. "Cancer. Since then, everything has been falling apart. Bills, work, the kids. Tonight before the fire, I was sitting at the kitchen table wondering how much more I could take." She paused, swallowing hard. "And then you ran into that fire for us. For people you don't even know." Ethan felt something crack open inside his chest. "I was starting to believe no one would come if we needed help," she continued. "Tonight proved me wrong." For the first time since the fire, Ethan couldn't speak. In the weeks that followed, the story spread. Local news called him a hero. Social media lit up with praise. Donations poured in for the Ramirez family. Volunteers helped rebuild their home. But what no one saw was Ethan sitting alone some nights, replaying Elena's words in his head. Because the truth was, Ethan himself had been struggling. A year earlier he'd lost a fellow firefighter, his best friend, to a warehouse fire. Survivor's guilt had followed him home every night. He'd questioned his purpose, his strength, his future. Saving that family didn't erase his pain, but it reminded him why he kept going. 3 months later, the Ramirez family moved back into their rebuilt home. They invited Ethan to dinner. Nothing fancy. Homemade food, laughter, kids running around like nothing had ever been wrong. At the end of the night, Sophia handed Ethan a crayon drawing. It showed a house, a fire, and a stick figure wearing a helmet with a big smile. On top she had written, "Thank you for not being scared." Ethan knelt down and hugged her, tears finally falling.